You're like a photographer.
Okay, so continuing in the Maimer Ani L'Dod V'Dodi Li from the Rebbe, which was said in Tavshin Lamed Beis. It was our third class. We left off with a question. And the question was, in the Maimer L'Tzemach Tzedek, based on describing the reasons why we blow the shofar in Elul, he gave two reasons. One, he said, was that it is representative of the Yira Tata, the lower level of fear. In order to come to the higher level of fear in Rosh Hashanah, you need to first go through the lower level of fear in Elul, which was fine. We got to the second question, or second reason, which we had a question on. And the Maimer is sort of following this question. The question was, we know that from the 10 days of Tshuva, starting on Rosh Hashanah, we draw down the Makif light. Explained yesterday exactly what that's all about, which essentially cleans up any blemishes of our lack of avoda during the year, and this is drawn down through the blowing of the shofar of Elul. And the question was, we said that basically because blowing the shofar in Elul brings you to a certain level of fear and bittul and so forth, then you require that in order to access the level of makif light. Because how do you draw down a makif? Drawing down a makif basically means that you are sort of a non-entity, right? In order to attach yourself to a light which is sort of beyond you, you need to be in a state of bittul. We said, ani nachei ruach, right? Someone who's poor and broken of spirit. This is, so to speak, the house that can hold Hashem. The house represented the level of the makif. Whereas we said that the heavens and earth is called kisi, v'hadom raglai. It's called like my footstool, my throne, and this represents inner lights, which is Torah mitzvahs. So the inner lights only do so much, but if you blemish in the Torah mitzvahs, how do you replenish them? You have to draw down from the house, from the makif light, which is much greater. We explained it at great length yesterday. In order to do this, what house can hold Hashem? If the heavens and earth is just His footstool, how are you going to find it? So we said, if someone who's in a state of nullity and bittul. And therefore we said that the nullity of bittul of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah, this is what the Tzemach Tzedek says, accomplishes this. But the question was, why do we need the shofar of Elul? The shofar of Rosh Hashanah is also a shofar, and on the contrary, it's a much greater level of shofar because it represents Yira Ilah, the higher level of fear, which seemingly is more bittul. Right? In which case, that's the question we left off, is why, what does the shofar of Elul have to do with anything? It seems like on the contrary, we don't need it at all. Then we said in order to understand this, we have to explain really the difference between the lower fear and the higher fear, the fear of Elul and Rosh Hashanah. And we said basically that this is the difference between what we call Bittul HaYesh and Bittul HaMetzias, which again we explained yesterday. Bittul HaYesh is the idea that you have still a feeling of self, but you divert yourself towards godliness. So you're like a godly self, but you're still a self. And Bittul Metzias is that your whole existence is not. Right? A light comes into the world, or into you, that you feel, which so completely is beyond the whole concept of creation, that there is no more you to experience yourself. And we said this is kind of like a tzaddik or Moshe Rabbeinu, who doesn't experience himself at all. He's just a vessel of godliness. One more point on that, which we didn't mention yesterday. We said a whole mashal regarding the wise person and the greater wise person. We'll look back into the notes. But one more point is just in general, when Hashem created the world, what He did was He took the aspect of the Or Ein Sof, and He took what's called Malchus of the Or Ein Sof. Malchus de Ein Sof, right? He took this level of the light itself, and He sort of siphoned off a little bit of it, which was separated from the rest so that it could be relevant to create worlds with. Because it was still connected with the general Or Ein Sof, which is beyond the worlds, and didn't separate this part out, then the worlds would never have gotten off the ground, essentially. So He took this little piece of light, and this is sort of like a seed from which all the worlds will be created with. The idea of this seed of light, this aspect of godliness itself, recognizes the existence of creation. That's why He siphoned it off, because this is godly light which is relevant to the creation. So within this aspect of godliness, which is a big tzimtzum on the general Ein Sof light, right? It's a light which, in its own understanding, so to speak, of this light, gives room and place and credence to the creation. It's there for the sake of bringing creation into being, right? So therefore, any appreciation of this light, by definition, will not put you into a state of nullifying your being completely. Because on the contrary, this light is there for the sake of championing your being, right? So accessing it, meditating on it, experiencing it, doesn't perform the task of nullifying your existence completely. On the contrary, you realize that this is my life, and it is a godliness itself which recognizes my existence. How could I go out of my own existence if the godly life force which is creating me itself gives credence and recognizes my existence, right? So it's impossible to go out of your own boundaries completely in the framework of this light. Whereas the light which the original Or Ein Sof light, from which this little piece of Malchus was siphoned off, that light doesn't recognize creation. It precedes creation. It's not a light for creation. It's a light of God, beyond the creation. So if that light should get to you in some way, then it makes sense that if you experience that light, then there's no more you. It's a light which in itself doesn't recognize the existence of the worlds. So if that light comes in, so to speak, and permeates the worlds, then the worlds go into a state of non-existence. And this is what's called Yira Ilah, the higher level of fear. If this should happen to you, Alavai.
So, that first Simpson, the second off is forever.
It's forever? I mean, not necessarily. Yeah. It's a willful act. So, I mean,
you've got to do it every
in reality, at the end of everything, at the end of it, we talk about sometimes to get excited about this, 50,000, 7,000 year cycles. That's like the span of time that of the whole creation. Everything will just revert back to oneness. So ultimately, it's not really forever, but it's not for now. Anyway, that's where we left off. The difference between to understand our question, which we had in the beginning of the class, from last class. So we have to understand really the difference between the lower fear and the higher fear, which now we're saying is the concept of bittul hayesh and bittul metzius. Okay, so we'll take it from Vizehu. The line is, it's in Os Dalid, 6 lines down. It says, Vizehu shebichdei lavo liyirei ilah, in order to come to the higher level of fear, hu dafka de gila milamayla. It can't come from you. It has to come from above. Like we said, if this should happen to you, right? Because you can't make this happen to you. Why? For the very reason we just described. The whole godly light, which is you, which is based on creation, you can't get out of it, right? It's the godly light which is responsible for bringing the mamale, the world of everybody's individual consciousness into being. So the best you can do is appreciate it. But you can't get out of it, in other words, and nullify your existence, because it itself is recognizing and championing your existence. So therefore, in order to get this higher light, you can't accomplish it yourself, because you're coming from within the world of the siphoned off light, which recognizes your existence. So it has to come from above. Because this, which is in the ability of man to grasp through his meditation, that's only the godliness which is comparable to the worlds, the godliness, as we said, which is for the sake of the worlds. That we can look into the worlds and sort of see, if we look a little bit beyond the surface, that it's all godliness, and the existence of everything is really not, tables and chairs, but the Or Eloki. We can do that, and we can meditate upon that. We can experience godliness, but it's a godliness which is there to create tables and chairs. In other words, it's a godliness which is here for us to enliven the world. Which is in comparison, which is in...
Does that kind of correspond with what the initial question is about why we're blown and suffering during the
It's going to come back to that.
Right? It's basically because it's more accessible.
I don't think we got to it yet, but...
I thought the whole time that we were talking about that light that we can't perceive was after the first Simpson, like the first, when there was nothing but God. We can't perceive that in anything in a way. I thought it was after the first Simpson, the siphoned off light is the light that we can't perceive.
No.
Now you're talking about the first. You're talking about even before that, trying to access that. first light before the first Simpson.
No, the Malchut of the Ein Sof, that's like enough you can experience that.
I don't know. You have to explain your question again. I'm lost in all these different levels of light.
It was Hashem.
Yeah.
That light.
Wait, Hashem
Ein
is
Sof.
the
Ein Sof is that.
Or Ein Sof, the light,
Right.
the
Then
infinite
there was a
light.
siphoning off of.
Then there was
that light,
then there was an empty space, right, that was created inside of that Or Ein Sof light. That's called the first Tzimtzum.
Okay.
Now hold on a second. Already when you're going to take away that empty space, the circle, let's say for example, it's like, or the sphere, which was taken away, even before it was taken away, it was sitting there, waiting to be taken away. In other words, that's the light which is siphoned off for the worlds. To begin with, it's sitting inside of the Or Ein Sof.
Right.
It's just nullified there, and it's like not experienced, it's not perceivable, right? So that's why Hashem removes it completely. But when he removes it, why that spot as opposed to like another spot in the Or Ein Sof? Because that was the spot which has this light of Malchus in it, basically Malchus of Ein Sof, which is a theoretically light which is relevant to the worlds. It's just that when it's all flooded in a higher light, it doesn't actually wind up being relevant to the world. So he removes it, separates the other light from it, and then reintroduces it in like small doses, and that is ultimately the light which creates the worlds. It was there already. The light that he brings back into that empty space, was the same light that was in that empty space before he removed it. So it was already there, that light that was siphoned off. He's just now bringing it back. What's that?
That's the light that we can't normally perceive when we're trying to access. I know it's all the same light.
No, hold on a second. That's the light that we can say. Yeah, say it again.
But we're talking about this light that we can't access. It's the light that all the worlds are created.
Yeah. No. The light that we can't access here in this model is talking about the Or Ein Sof that's beyond that sphere.
Right.
The light that we can access and we can have, like, so to speak. I mean,
Exactly the first Simpson.
is the
Before.
no, but it even was there before the first Simpson. It just wasn't perceivable yet.
Yeah.
In other words, that's what it is. Malchus the Ein Sof is that it's already there. There's already, to begin with, when the light is shining, there's already a light which is relevant to the world.
I don't know what you
Okay. All right. So basically, going on. So we said that the light that we can perceive through, that man is able to perceive through meditation, is a light which is only relevant to the world. In order to feel by him the exaltedness of the Or Ein Sof itself, which is above the worlds, you can't do it yourself. It has to come to you. And that's what the pasuk indicates when it says that we've been commanded to do all these mitzvahs, these laws, in order to fear Havaya. What do you mean fear Havaya? Fearing Havaya represents the higher fear. In order to come to this level of fearing Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is representative of this higher level of fear, you can't come to it by your own work, by your own meditation, by your own thoughts. Only through something which comes from above, which is brought down through mitzvahs, because mitzvahs don't come from you. Mitzvahs is like objects from Hashem. So that's what it means when it says V'tzivanu Hashem la'asos es kol hachukim ha'eleh. Hashem commanded us to do these mitzvahs in order to fear Hashem, in order to fear Havaya. In order to come to the higher fear, you need mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is like a little tool in your hand, which comes from Hashem Himself, which through the agency of them, that's like a revelation from above, which enables you to have this higher level of fear. But just of your own work, sitting on a mountaintop and meditating without the tools of mitzvahs, which is like the aspect of your own meditation from the standpoint of the constraints of the creation, you can never get out of those constraints. You need something which is given to you from outside the constraints of creation in order to get there, which is a mitzvah. What's your question?
There was two words. The one on the line before you, V'yitzonu.
Vitzivanu.
Vitzivanu. And Aleph Aleph is Echad Echad?
Efshar. Impossible. V'zeu sha'yira de'elul hi yira tata. Vayira the Rosh Hashanah hi yira ilah. And this is what it means, that the fear of Elul is the lower fear and the Rosh Hashanah is the higher fear. Why? Ki be'elul sha'melech hu b'sadeh. When in Elul the king is in the field, shviyoshev b'sadeh lo nirgash hagadus v'aromu shelo. Since he's in the field, you're not experience his greatness and his exaltedness. The Rebbe adds an interesting footnote, 23. He says you don't experience his greatness. Gamlo hagadlus bebrias ha'olamos. You don't even experience his lower level of greatness, which brings a person to the level of the lower fear. Meaning to say what? That even this state that you can reach in meditation, which is sort of the perception of the godly light, underlying all of creation. That's not just given to you without any work in Elul. When it says the king is in the field, it means that yes, that light of creation. In other words, the king is in the field as opposed to in his chamber in the palace. So you're not even Bechlal talking about the level of the Ein Sof light, which is beyond the world. That's the palace light. But even the light which is relevant to the world, which the king is in the field, it's not just automatically given to you in Elul, right? It's not what it means the king is in the field. It means that if you go out to the field, right, and you meditate, in other words, and you struggle and look for it and look for the king and go to greet him, then that light is available to you. That's what it means. He's waiting in the field for you to find him, not that he's just coming to you. So in other words, when the king is in the field, so to speak, in the time of Elul, you don't feel any light automatically. There's no instant revelation. It's just that there's a perceivable revelation should you want to work for it and run out to the field, i.e. toil with your mind to meditate. But even if you do that, the only godly revelation that you can get to is the king in the field revelation, which is the godly life force, which is there for the sake of the worlds. You can't run out into the field and find Hashem in his palace. Right? Because that's a whole other level of revelation of godly light, which is beyond the worlds. Which again, you can't do that on your own accord. Did I lose you guys there? You follow that?
Yeah, but it's I could have said it's לא מצא גילוי מלמעלה אלא על ידי עבודת האדם. Saying it's only.
Okay, we didn't get to that line yet. Yeah.
Even the state that you can't reach in meditation,
there's a state that you can't reach in meditation, which is Bechlal not available for you in Elul. When it says the king is in the field, I threw you off at this footnote, I think. Basically what he's trying to say is when it says the king is in the field, that means that it's a revelation which is, let's just put it out there, the king is in the field means the idea of a lower level of godly life force, right, as opposed to the king in his palace. So in Elul, the king is only in the field, he's not in his palace, which means the only level of godly light which is available to you is that level of godly light which is relevant to the worlds, which he's creating the worlds with. Which you can, and the footnote was just saying that even that is not just coming to you as a gift, you have to run out and get there, you have to meditate on that. And therefore the fear which comes in Elul does not come from above like some kind of a revelation, but rather through the avodas of Adam. That's what this line is saying. But through working on it, that's what we're trying to say, that higher fear has to come from above. Lower fear, you have to bring it yourself. And the idea of the king is in the field is you have to go get it yourself. It doesn't come to you. That's why the fear that is available in the month of Elul is only Yira Tata. There is no revelation of the king in his palace to you. That is not happening right now. It's not available. This gift from above, you can't get it right now. And unless you're a tzaddik and you have special keys. But in general, the higher fear doesn't become available until Rosh Hashanah.
So the gift on Elul is not much that we get raised up or something. It's actually that kind of Hashem, so to speak, comes down in a place that's not so present before.
It's just trying to tell you that if you seek him, you'll find him. It's more than that. If you seek him, you'll find him all the time. But the difference of Elul is that there's what's called the Mesinas Koach. It's like an encouragement. The fact that the king is in the field intrinsically makes you want to seek him more. It doesn't show you him, right? He's not revealing himself to you. It's just the fact that you know he's in the field is going to make you get up out of bed and do something to find him. Whereas the whole year round, you can get up out of bed and find him also. But it's a long fight and it's a struggle and you have to travel a long way. You won't find him so easily. So you're not encouraged to even look and do the work. The idea of Elul is that the king's in the field. It's not that he's revealing, nothing's revealed to you, but that you're excited to go and start the process of meditation and work on yourself and get there. And it's like what we call a nesinas koach. It's like an encouragement that he's giving you, but not a revelation.
But there's no other fundamental difference, because otherwise why the whole marshal of the king is in the field?
That's what it means. The king is in the field. It doesn't say the king is in your living room.
No, but I mean, like, okay, but like I thought it's like more like you said, you get special powers in these 10 days.
What is this? No, the 10 days is the 10 days of Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. That's why you get special powers, because there's a revelation from above. In Elul, there's no revelation from above. Those 10 days when an individual prayer is like a minyan's prayer is not in Elul. It's in the 10 days of Tshuva, which is in Tishrei.
So you're talking about Elul only now, like Rosh Hashanah. From Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's like a different story completely.
No, that is the different story, right? That's when the king is giving you something from above. That's when he's in his palace. Yeah.
Nesinas koach, you mean?
An empowerment. Okay. So basically, what we're saying is that therefore, it's only available a lower level of fear. The type of godly revelation that's available for you is only one that the king is in the field, should you find him. But in Rosh Hashanah, when the king, who beheichel malchuso, this is the whole end of the mashal, this is why you didn't get it yet, because we're now getting to it. The king is in his palace, sha'az nirgash haromu shalo, then you feel from above his exaltedness. When you come to the palace, it's not like seeing the king in the field. You see thousands of people all in formation and a moat and a huge palace and like all the trimmings that so you can't get in there. The sight itself is scary. The sight itself, they say, makes you think, who's responsible for all this? And it's like this man in the top of this tower kind of having all power. So it's an automatic fear and dread falls upon you when you see the king in his state of majesty. When you see the king in the field, there's no empowerment, there's no in other words, there's no revelation from above.
What was the first little bit that? I didn't hear you say that.
Uber Rosh Hashanah keshamelech hu beheichel malchus. So when the king is in his palace, sha'az nirgash haromu shelo, then you fear his exaltedness. You feel his exaltedness. Shehu meroma muvdal me'am. You feel that he's completely removed from the people, that he's not one of you. Like the idea of the king is in the field, right, is the idea of godliness, where he's like one of us, so to speak. It's a godliness which is siphoned off for the sake of the world. The difference between godliness and us, so to speak, is just that we're like with the manifestation of what happens when godliness comes down and is a little bit not seen. So instead of seeing just godliness, we see a world, but it's the same light. It just you can see through it and see the God himself. But there's that level of godliness which is not siphoned off of the world, is that it's like the king, as he is completely disconnected from the people, you realize that I'm not one of him, I have nothing to do with him, he's like a whole other breed. He's beyond creation completely. And this is what it means, he's meromam muvdal me'am, he's totally separate from the people and exalted above them when he's in his palace, and you recognize that. And in the nimshal, in the analog, this is the giloi aromus de'orein sof shalamayil ma'olamos. This represents the revelation of the exaltedness of the Orein Sof, which is completely beyond the worlds. The aspect of light which Hashem never plans on having worlds in. And that's the Yira of Rosh Hashanah, is Yira Ilah.
Baroim, it's removed and the
exalted.
Represents the exaltedness.
What's that?
Represents the exaltedness.
It represents the exaltedness of the Orein Sof, which is beyond the light which is set aside for the sake of the worlds. Right, so the mashal is clear now. We have basically two aspects of godliness in this mashal. The king is in the field represents the godliness which is siphoned off for the worlds, and the king is in the palace represents the godliness which is completely beyond the worlds. And therefore, Elul, which is when the king is in the field, is only relevant the lower fear, because this is the type of fear which you can access with your own meditation. It's not given to you. You have to go out and greet him. But if you go out and greet him, you can find a level of godliness which is a field-like godliness, which is a lower level. Whereas on Rosh Hashanah, something is given to you from above, a revelation of the king in his state of majesty, indicating that there's something which is completely beyond your level, which is not relevant to the world, and that is just granted to you from above, so to speak, and that represents the higher fear, which has to be given to you. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that initially we thought that the first explanation was separate and different, but it was a part of this one. You needed that one in terms of it explained the difference between the lower fear and the higher fear of Rosh Hashanah, right? So we needed that information in order to explain the second part.
What second part?
Second part about
The two levels of godliness.
yeah, 2 levels of godliness.
Yeah, exactly. The Rebbe says at the beginning of Os Dalet, he says we can understand this by first explaining the difference between the lower fear and the higher fear. So in other words, this notion. Okay. Anyway, B'yesh Loma, going on. Tkiyas HaShofar B'Rosh Hashanah. This, that you need to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah b'chdei level yirila, in order to come to the higher level of fear. Right? Because if we're saying that Rosh Hashanah is all of a sudden just this revelation from above, you got there, right? That the 10 days of tshuva is a gift from above, why do you need to blow the shofar b'chlal, seemingly? Even though that's the time in the mashal when the king is in his palace, and therefore this level is just revealed to you. So what's this avoda of the shofar necessarily connected with it? It's something that happens naturally in time. Why do you need that? Shofar, because in the time of Rosh Hashanah on its own, the fact that the time has come, and therefore this revelation is available, and therefore you reach, so to speak, a day in the year when it's the level of the godly life force which is beyond creation is shining, right? Hu kizman hu megidrei olam. Why do you need the shofar on top of that? Because the fact that it came through time is holding you back to a certain degree. Because time is a creation that has to do with the boundaries of the world. So the fact that you just got there naturally, so to speak, through the process of creation itself in time, means that it's not really available to you just because the time dictates so. Because time itself is something which is concealed by the world, is part of the world's boundaries.
The godly?
The boundaries. Therefore, therefore the exaltedness of the Or Ein Sof, this level which is beyond the world, Shemizgale b'Rosh Hashanah mitzad hazman to Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, that level of the Or Ein Sof, which is revealed simply because the day is holy, you reach to this level of Rosh Hashanah, which is like a mitzvah in the Torah. Even if you don't have a shofar, you have a Rosh Hashanah, right? The day has come. It's a thing, even in its own right. And there is a level of revelation of Or Ein Sof, which happens just because of the day, but that revelation, who's shayach la'olamos, that revelation is still relevant to the world. In other words, you're not getting at that point without the shofar the full revelation which is completely beyond the world. Because remember we said before that in order to have this revelation which is completely beyond the world, you can't get there yourself. And you getting there yourself, also there's an aspect of that. You reaching there in time is also like you getting there yourself. Because that's like the world got there. The boundaries themselves were responsible for taking you there, whether it's your meditations or the day has arrived. All of that is like within the realms of the boundaries of time and space in the world. So nothing mitzad the boundaries of time and space in the world can on their own right access a light which is beyond the boundaries of time and space, even the day of Rosh Hashanah itself, whose job it is to reach to that level of the king is in the palace. Therefore, we said that you need a nesinas, you need a giloy milamayla, you need a revelation from above, which we said is found specifically in the mitzvahs. Because the mitzvahs don't come from time and space, they come from beyond time and space. And this is the idea of the shofar, basically. Hagile de Or Ein Sof. Romamos is exaltedness. Hagile de Or Ein Sof, kamoshi kadosh muvdam ha'olamos. So this level of the Or Ein Sof is completely removed from the worlds. So we just got through in like an intermediary level, basically. You have the regular level of meditation that you arrive at, which is sort of like an Elul thing. And then you have the day of Rosh Hashanah, which is above that, but it's not yet completely beyond the worlds because it's still connected with time. So in order to get to the level of the Or Ein Sof, which is completely removed from the worlds entirely, hu be'ikar agdei mitzvahs. As we said before, this is through mitzvahs. That's what we said previously, that V'tzivanu Hashem la'asos es kol hachukim ha'ela, that Hashem commanded us with the mitzvahs the Yira es Hashem, to reach the higher level of fear. That without like Him throwing us a line from beyond creation, which is a mitzvah, we can't reach this higher level of fear. So too, Rosh Hashanah, even though it's a great day, we can't reach the total kadosh level without a mitzvah attached with it. As it says, Asher Kedishan mitzvah. He commanded us with His mitzvahs to blow the shofar. He mitzvah, and since blowing the shofar in Rosh Hashanah is a mitzvah, therefore therefore the fear and the trepidation of the sound of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, he yira ubitul b'tachlis, yira ilah. It's an ultimate and complete bittul, a complete self-nullity, which we said is called yira ilah. In other words, that's really how you get to this level, that the king is in the palace and he's completely removed from the world and from the people. You need a mitzvah, and that is the mitzvah of the shofar, obviously. Accordingly, we can add an explanation. Therefore, we can see the difference between the shofar of Rosh Hashanah and the shofar of Elul now. Because the fear that comes from the voice of the shofar of Elul only gets you to a lower level of fear. We said that also the shofar of Elul creates fear. And we said, right, that's the whole idea that even the... What's that?
Sorry, that's after Shayira. Abba?
Haba, that comes from the sound of the shofar in Elul is the lower level of fear. This, that the sound of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah brings on such an amazing level of fear and bittul metzias, an ultimate absence of self completely, yira ilah, hu mitzara mitzvah t'kiya shofar. It's because specifically it's a commandment. It's not just stam that a shofar brings fear, because that's also true. We said if you blow the shofar in the city, the people won't be afraid. Blowing the shofar brings fear. But the fact that you're able to get such a level of fear, which is a complete nullity of self, it's not so much that it's become the shofar, it's because of the mitzvah of the shofar. Because you're accessing a light which comes from beyond creation. The mitzvahs enable you to basically harness something which is completely beyond creation. Since the blowing of the shofar in Elul is not a commandment, we do not say before we blow the shofar every day in Elul that He has sanctified us with His commandments to blow the shofar. There's none of that. You just blow it. Therefore, the whole level of fear that can possibly come out of that is only a level of bittul hayesh, basically staying in your state of existence, but being afraid and doing the will of God, because there's no line from heaven granting you exit from this world's boundaries, because it's not a mitzvah. Therefore, it only brings yira tata. Nonetheless, but it now brings us back full circle. Nonetheless, this fear of the shofar in Elul is a preparation, a necessary preparation to the greater fear of Rosh Hashanah. Because as we said before, in order to come to higher fear, you need to first have lower fear. As we said originally, why do we blow the shofar in Elul? The Tzemach Tzedek said, because in order to arrive at the higher fear, you need to first have the lower fear. You can't jump to one level. Even though the higher fear has really nothing to do with your avoda. It just comes from above. Nonetheless, you don't get that gift granted to you from above unless you prepare yourself first. So you need to have the lower fear of Elul in order to receive the higher fear of Rosh Hashanah. Now we're understanding really why it's not available to you in Elul. Because the shofar blast, which is responsible for your fear, is not a mitzvah. And therefore there's no way for you to all of a sudden go out of your mitzias lagamre, completely lose yourself, because you need something from beyond creation in order to do that, and you don't have one in your hand, the month of Elul, mitzad fear, mitzad the blowing of the shofar. Okay, doing pretty good on time today. Yeah.
So we say a blessing on the shofar during Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah, sure. Right, it's a mitzvah, you say a blessing. Shema kol shofar.
But basically you said the fact that it's a mitzvah, but the fact that you don't say bracha before, like
You do say a bracha before, that's what you just asked. On Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
On Rosh Hashanah.
Elul is
Elul we don't.
Elul is not a mitzvah. That's why you don't say a bracha. Okay, everyone's clear on everything?
Uh-huh.
What's that? Everything. Hey. Os hey.
We finished that last time.
We finished it, yeah.
What was Kanal? No, you told me.
Kaniz Karla'ila, as it's mentioned above.
That's right.
Okay, so Hine Yedua, it's known. In order to come from the lower state of fear to the higher state of fear, which is our whole process that we're discussing, you can't get there without love in the middle. It's a love sandwich. The Seder Avoda hu dechilu, rachimu, rachimu, dechilu. Right? The order of the work is that it's fear, love, love, fear. Right? Like it says in the pasuk, we learn this from. It says Yitzchak ben Avram holidas Yitzchak. Right? The pasuk in Toldos. Parshas Toldos, it says right there, this is like kind of where this idea is gleaned from in Chumash. It says Yitzchak ben Avraham holidas Yitzchak. Yitzchak was the son of Avram. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So everyone says, in all parts of Torah, not only in Kabbalah, they say, why is he just said Yitzchak, the son of Avram? Why do you have to say Avram gave birth to Yitzchak? So there's many different Perushim, but in Chassidus, Kabbalah, it explains that it's telling you the order of affairs. Yitzchak, Avram, Yitzchak is fear, love, love, fear. Because Yitzchak is Gevura, or fear, and Avram is Chesed, or love. So it's telling Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram Olidas Yitzchak. It gives you the order of avoda, like we're just discussing now. So in order to come to the higher level of fear, you have to transverse the two levels of love in the middle. Dechilu is fear and Rechimu is love. So that's the order. Dechilu, Rechimu, Rechimu, Dechilu. Dechilu Arishon, the first fear, Hu Yiratata, of course, is the lower level of fear. Base dargas b'rechimu. Then you have two levels of love. Avazuta va'avarava. It's called the lower love, the small love, and the great love. And of course, the small love and the great love is very similar to the small fear and the great fear in that one you arrive at through your own meditations. It's just that you're meditating on different thoughts. So it leads to feelings of love as opposed to fear. And also the great love is also a revelation from above. It's not something you can access on your own, but it's instead of a revelation of the awe of Hashem, it's a revelation of intense love of Hashem. So in other words, there's the higher level and the lower level of fear and love. They're similar in that way. But nonetheless, the higher fear is higher than the higher love. So then you have, after the two levels of love, the higher level of fear. From this it's understood. This that from the lower level of fear of Elul, you come to the higher level of fear of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it's a little bit repetitious here. You have to preface love. In order to get to the second level of fear, you must preface it with love. So even after you, so to speak, obtained the lower level of fear, you're still not ready for the revelation of Rosh Hashanah. Now we said that the lower level of fear is necessary in order to get you to the higher level of fear of Rosh Hashanah. But it's not sufficient in its own. You then need two levels of love to come with that. Because you can't get to the higher level without going through the ladder of service. We can explain this according to what it says in Likutei Torah. Remember the mashal, going back to the mashal. At first we said in the beginning of this mimer that it looks like there's no fear connected with Elul. Because in the mashal, you just see this king like smiling and happy with you. And we had to look deeper and we said, no, the fear is that you have to run out and find him. That's like requiring your Kabbalah's ol. Now we're returning to the notion that if you look into the mashal, it clearly says that the king, when you go to him, he receives everyone with a happy countenance, and he shows a smiling face to all. The panim yafos upanim sochkos hu inyan ava. These two levels, right? Why is remember we said the mashal is very, very exacting. So it says that he not only does he receive everyone happily, but he then shows them a smiling face. So he says this is basically two faces of the king. Panim yafos, panim sochkos. And those two are exact, the two levels of love. That the first level of love is the lower level of love. Why? Because he's merely receiving you with love. You come to him, okay, here I am, I'm smiling. But the second level, then he like shows you love. That's very connected with what we said, that the second level of love is something he gives you from above. So the first level, you like access the king, so to speak, by your own level. So when you get there, he receives you with love. The second level is something he gives you. He shows you a loving face or a smiling face. So these are the two levels of love, the lower level and the higher level of love. So basically, this arouses by us the two levels of love. Just like the king had two levels, this is paralleled in us, so to speak, that it arouses in us the two levels of love towards the king. The fact that two levels of love are available, the lower level and the higher level, means that we're going to bring ourselves to receiving them. Like a face reflects a face in water. In other words, the fact that they're there means it arouses us to conjure them up within. Accordingly, we can say, therefore, the details of this mashal in Likutei Torah hint to these four levels that were explained previously, that were said above. And here they are. This that you go out to greet the king and receive him, that's the lower level of fear. Afterwards, then the two levels of love. He shows you a happy face, or he receives you with a happy face, and shows you a happy face. And then that's the lower, the small love and the great love. And after this, you come to the palace of the king, which is the higher fear. Right. So again, basically, the Rebbe is showing you the exactness of this mashal. And we're seeing that it has the lower fear, the two levels of love, and the higher fear. Okay, so I think we're going to hold here for today.
There's emotion.
Yeah.